The reason why I'm saying that what cost us, to me, is poor corporate governance and poor risk governance in the banking or the financial sector.
Hello and welcome to yet another exciting edition of BizTech on GhanaWeb TV with me, Mawuli, Ahorlumegah. Today I have a very special guest with me and we'll be talking about developments in the banking sector, especially within the last 2 years of the Ghanaian economy. I have with me Dr. Richmond Atuahene, and he's a banking consultant. Doc, welcome to the show. Can I give you a fist bump?
Thank you very much.
How's everything?
By His grace, I'm doing well.
Yeah, you're looking good, at least for your age.
It is just by the grace of God.
Great. So, Doc, let's come to today's topic for the day, which is the banking sector. We've seen developments in the economy in the last 2 years. We've gone for an IMF bailout. We've had a domestic debt exchange program. Just take us back briefly. How did we get to this point?
Thank you very much. I think I'll go back as far as 2014, 2015. In the 2015 IMF country report, there was some sort of warning to some of the banks that were not doing well, about 6 of them. So they told the government either to do resolution or find a means of supporting them. But that issue was not basically addressed until the new government assumed power in 2017, where they had to do resolution of some of the banks. The Unibanks, UT, and what have you, and Capital Bank. They were all facing liquidity challenges because some have borrowed, some have given credit far beyond the limits of their deposit. And some also have done what we call related lending, connected and related lending.
Okay.
Basically meaning that they create a pseudo empire among themselves and give the customer deposit, grant them to their own companies. So when the IMF country report saw it, he said we should tackle it with all speed and alacrity. Other than that, there will be a seismic risk, meaning that there will be a contingent risk on the whole banking sector. Unfortunately, it wasn't done. So when this government assumed power, he said that he wanted to tackle it. That is where it started with these consolidation banks and what have we. So we ended up with that crisis, and then they introduced a new capital regime, which some of the banks could not meet. They had to go to
250
the
million.
GATT Amalgamated Trust to be able to shore off their capital. So having the dust settled, then we were hit by the matter of all disaster of the DDEP restructuring, which has actually, if you do the calculations very well, it impacted on all the financial sector. But the banks were hit because the banks held, according to IMF country report, 30 to 50% of the government bonds were held by banks, even excluding the SDIs, the specialized deposit, the rural banks and the savings and loan. But if you add them all, we're talking about close to 60% of the government debt. The rest going to insurance, pensions, and foreign investors and what have you. So that is how far this thing brought us. And then December, I think in their discussions, they decided that they would adopt a debt restructuring through the domestic debt exchange. There are too many debt restructuring systems, which I know. We have the debt reprofiling. We have the debt rescheduling.
Okay.
And we have the straightforward haircut, which this word Ghanaians doesn't want to.
the famous haircut.
But unfortunately, whatever you do, there will always be a haircut. And what we have done, there has been a serious haircut. Because the reason is that if you have a bond of 9.3%, maturing on the whole thing maturing in 2027, and you decide to drop the coupon rate to an average of 8.3 and extend the maturity period to 2038, it means you have stretched the liquidity and at the same time the returns on these bonds over the period. So that resulted in the huge losses. The total one to the banking sector, the banking alone, was, I believe, 41.3 billion. And I can tell you all off my head, the banks, top of the banks, rating down to all the 23. Some were hit marginally.
Yeah.
Some of the foreign banks were hit very well. But some of the foreign banks also strategized that they were able to trade the bonds. They saw it in 2020. So they went to the secondary market and sold the bonds.
Yeah.
So if you see the results, you can see that most of the foreign banks, especially the English banks and the French banks and the Germans, they were not hit very well.
Yeah.
But those from South Africa were hit. And those from Nigeria, some were also hit. But the indigenous banks were hit
the most.
Very, very, very well.
So did that have to do with the structures not being in place, especially for the indigenous banks?
I would like to, this is a comment that I think people don't want to take it. But the problem is that there was a poor risk management in the banking sector. Because, you see, if you have customer deposit and you decide to invest far more exceedingly above the loan, one bank, I won't mention his name, his total bond was 9.2 billion as against his loan, the loan portfolio, 7.2.
So that's like
because they saw
more.
Yeah, because they saw it was a cheaper way of making money. But in risk, the risk management, nobody goes for higher return and look at the risk involved. Unfortunately, I'll make it categorically. What happened was that there was a poor risk management from the boards of the various banks. And there was also a corporate governance failure. Because if the corporate governance failure of the banks were very good, like some of the foreign banks, they saw it and decided to trade off, go and sell it and go into something else.
On the bonds market.
Yes, leave the bonds market and let them who wants to take the bonds. That is the reason why I'm saying that what cost us, to me, is poor corporate governance and poor risk governance in the banking or the financial sector.
Doc, thank you very much. Now let's come to the state lender, which is the Bank of Ghana. They recorded some impairment loss, 60 billion last year in their audited financial reports. The bank argues that it's a technical loss. I know it keeps coming up, and then there's always the argument of whether it's a technical loss or it's not a technical loss. But the bank also argues that it had to take almost 50% of the haircut due to the DDEP. What's your take on that?
See, my take is very simple. Those who are saying it's a technical loss, they don't know IFRS 9, International Financial Reporting Standard 9. There's nothing like a technical loss in it. When you go to the energy sector, we have what we call technical loss. But when we come to finance or accounting or banking, IFRS 9 tells you how you treat these assets. So those who say technical loss, I don't know where they got the law from. I know in energy, there's what we call technical loss, because the power transmission, especially with Ghana, the cables that we use are not protecting the energy. So they use technical losses. Those who say technical losses have forgotten the accounting standards, the international accounting standard. So I don't call those who call it, I don't know how they can call it. But the implication of the losses are quite huge. People will say that we had to do it because we were the last point to be. Unfortunately for us, the Bank of Ghana Act 612, Act 2002, as amended 2016-918, it states categorically, Section 30 says that, Section 37, it says that whenever there is an emergency, the Minister of Finance, the Governor, and the Accountant General should meet and decide how they will go about it and report within 7 sitting days to the Parliament to get approval of the Parliament before all these things happen. So when people say that there was a need, yes, the need was there, but the law was there. Because you cannot pass a law, as I've said, 30, Section 30, subsection 7. And the Section 6 says that you should not spend more than 5% of your previous revenue. By my calculations, they would have only granted 5%, would have only granted government 3 billion. Not the 50 billion which they had a haircut at bank by.
So it could have been less.
It could have been less. But unfortunately, the whole law was set apart, and decided to go and do something to please their masters. But if you look at the law critically, the law is very specific. First, it used to be 10%. The census to reduce, yeah. Then, I think 2014, the IMF went into, I think, what is this? Senche. And then they decided, they wanted even to make it zero. But that government said that, no. In a developing economy,
you still have
to have a bank, central bank coming in. So it was agreed, both those opposition and the current government.
That's at the Senche Forum.
Yeah, so that they should put 5%. And they all agreed. When they came, they amended the Bank of Ghana Act to read 918, Act 2016 918. So when people say that it was an emergency, nobody is saying it was an emergency. But we should have followed a due process. If we have followed a due process and gone to Parliament, like they did with the Fiscal Responsibility Act at 982, they managed to suspend it.
Yeah.
So why could
the COVID period?
Yeah, but they has not even reinstated. Why couldn't they have done the same thing for this to at least to regularize what they did? So that is where I have my problem and my challenge. You can't make laws and flap the laws like no business. Even in other jurisdiction, other people can go to certain courts. I won't call about Ghana court, certain court, and prove the case that this is wrong. So for me, technical, I don't understand. The legal aspect of it, people should go and read section 30, subsection 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You'll see exactly what I'm saying.
Doc, just quick one. Do you think Parliament did not do its job by, in a way, sort of hauling the finance minister before it and, asking him why he took the decision? And because the argument from the Bank of Ghana is we don't report to Parliament. That's their argument. It's the finance minister's responsibility to report to Parliament. So don't you think the Parliament should have, in a way, instituted certain measures to bring the finance minister before it and ask the finance minister, why did you do this?
Thank you very much, Mawuli. I think there's one thing bringing the person and asking relevant questions. You see, the man can come there, but you may not ask relevant questions.
So you may not get a response.
You may not, no. And if the man is crafty and cunning, he will be able to get out of it. But if you should ask him, you sample him and tell him that we are almost 5%, more than 5%. What is your strategy? How are you going to do it? Give us a breakdown of it. Tell us how we're going to address it and how long are we going to do this? And tell us the limit you're going to do. At least the finance minister would have gone down and do his calculations very well. But when he comes in, it looks like you're looking at the personality. You're not looking at the issues. You'll be asking irrelevant questions. And the problem we have in this country now is that we are not asking the relevant questions that would address the issues. So you can call him. You cannot call him today, but nobody would even ask the law. So the Parliament is there. I've always said that. I've said it on one of my programs that the biggest problem I have is the parliamentary rule. We have the executive,
oversight.
And the judiciary and the oversight. I'm beginning to get worried. That is why in one of my recent deliberations, I said that the constitution has to be amended so that a debt cap is in the constitution, so that you don't just get up and borrow. Because the way it is, when it is good for these people, they will say, yeah. When it's good for these people, nay. But if it's entrenched in the constitution, Bank of Ghana cannot sit down and say that I'm giving far more exceedingly above. That one, somebody can impeach you. But unfortunately, the relevant questions are not asked. Let me give you a lead. Has anybody asked, has this minister come to Parliament to tell us the cost of what he did? When I mean the cost and the implication. Did everybody know that the banks were going to look 41 billion and Bank of Ghana was going to look 60 billion? These things should be, if they said they did a stress test, this thing should have been known.
So there should have been a prior knowledge.
Yeah, prior knowledge. And so that we can divine a strategic mitigation so that we don't find ourselves where we are. Now, as we're doing, just like fire and water, you put the water, fire there, you put water in. It's not a good strategy. So the parliament has to come back and do it work like other jurisdiction. Let me give you example. In my recent delivery, I was talking about country like UK. Conservative may be in control, but there are certain issues when they come. The party's allegiance is thrown away. But in this particular country, I don't think it will happen. When it is this party, everybody wants to say it's good. There is no objectivity. Objectivity is based on science and data. But if you don't have the science and data, you cannot be objective. If you're speaking of debt exchange, you should be able to tell the sectors how is it going to hit it so that you can ask relevant questions. That is why I find it very difficult to say, send him to parliament. It's just about relevant questions. If you ask relevant questions, he's not able to answer, then you have a way out. But if you hold him there and you begin to look at issues, generalistic issues, not finance and economics issues, then that is where we face the challenge.
Just very briefly, is the Bank of Ghana insolvent? The bank says they are not, and they are not supposed to be making profits, although they've recorded some negative equities. Do you think the position of the Bank of Ghana, are they in trouble?
Oh, you see, for policy issue, they are not insolvent.
Okay.
But the question is that they have extra roles to play, i.e., lender of last resort. If any of the banks should have a liquidity challenge, would Bank of Ghana be able to give him the emergency liquidity support as during Capital Bank they give him? Can they do that? Because now they've been squeezed the liquidity. All those money has gone. And I'm wondering how they'll be able to function as a central bank, playing at least one role like the lender of last resort to the banking sector. That is why I'm saying that when people say insolvent, fine, you can call it insolvent or insolvent, but it's not that matters. The role that Bank of Ghana should play, would they be able to play it actively?
Which is to provide lending support.
Let's assume, say, 10 of the banks today get up in the morning and they have a liquidity challenges. Would Bank of Ghana be able to aggregate to give money to them? That is the question we should ask ourselves. And again, people say that it matters not. Fine. Literature has said that. Some literature say it matters, some say it doesn't matter. One that I read was that, how do people perceive you? You are not operating in an island. Ghana, Bank of Ghana has a gun account with Fed Reserve, UK, America, and the Bank of England, and the Euro. You have accounts there. Because you don't do transaction from Accra. You do transaction across correspondent bank. What is the perception from those people who have money? Do you think even if you need some small credit, they'll be able to give you? Because they know you're not good, you're good for nothing. And the sad thing about this country, some people compare oranges and apples. Recently, I heard that people were talking about England had a challenge. I heard that they said, I think Australia. But you see, when you're talking about central banking in England, we are nowhere near England.
Yeah.
We are nowhere, and we can never be near because systems are there. When they did the quantitative easing, when the economy was in trouble, now they are recouping it.
Yeah.
When the Americans did TRAB, the TAP, when the financial crisis, do you know they have recouped all the money they give to the banks, and they even made profits.
Yeah.
Can that be said about Ghana Bank? Can that be said about any central bank in Africa? Absolutely no.
Doc, so speaking about responses, we had the famous Occupy BoG protest, which was widely attended. And at the end of the protest, we got some reaction from the Bank of Ghana governor, which a lot of people found very surprising. I myself, when I saw the quote, I was surprised that a man of his caliber would make such a quote. What's your take on that? Do you think he was frustrated?
I think in this country, even the current president, Kumi Preko, at that time I was in NIB. We had to run under our desk. The soldiers came in and beating everybody because they came into our office at Kingsway. Kingsway. And it has been part of our democratic development.
So protesting is
it tests how resilient your democracy is. So if people demonstrate genuinely, I don't think that answer respond is the best. It's not the best. Because you should understand that democracy starts from this point. Yesterday, last Saturday, there was a huge demonstration in London against the Israelites' attack on
the Hamas.
But all the people say that organize your meeting, go and your man pass, and nobody. And don't go and hold placards because they didn't hold placards. So for me, genuine demonstration are part of a democracy future, especially where the parliament is not actually holding the fort to balance it. The civil society has a right to go out and demonstrate, to tell you that we see what you do and we think it's not going to help us. And when it happens like that, I expect people to be a bit circumspect about the responses about people. Because when you describe people like the way he described, which I don't want to quote, to be quoted on your paper, because I don't find it quite good at all. Because they are all Ghanaians. They all contribute to the Ghana's economy. They all support, when the going is good, they all support us. So maybe if somebody brand them that way, for me, the comment, the least talk about it, for me, the better.
The better. Okay, Doc, let's still come to the banking sector in itself. We sought IMF bailout. We received the first tranche, 600 million. Government says they've been able to be on a recovery path. We've concluded a first review. Now we are hoping for a second one, but this is based on financing assurances and all of that. What's your take on that?
Well, I like to quote Dr. Ishmael Yamson. Recently, he made a statement, and I want to quote him verbally. He said, one of our problems are coming from the Bretton Woods institutions.
Which is the IMF and the World Bank.
Yes, especially the IMF. What Dr. Ishmael Yamson said that, whenever we are going wayward, they're supposed to raise the flag and tell us to do the right thing. But they wait for us to go in a mess, and they come and put hardship on everybody. And for that matter, I agree. That is why you find them easy to say the economy is turning around. I'm sorry to say that. Inflation at 38.1. Treasury rate at 33.1.
Monetary policy at 30%.
Monetary at 30%. I mean, how can the economy turn around? You see, the IMF statement of the economy turning around, to me, I think it's too sweeping. They should look at the realities on the ground. The level of poverty, the level of hardship. You hear them at their lip. I mean, you never talk about pensioners.
Yeah.
The most vulnerable people in this country are the retired teachers, the retired nurses, the retired doctors. Because already their salary were no good. All that they talk about their lip. In other jurisdiction, they will always, that is why, in the early 90s, we created what we call PAMS card, program to mitigate the social cost of the adjustment. They look at the vulnerable people and try to resolve it. But if you come and tell us that the economy, inflation is 8.1, when my next neighbor is 7%, Nigeria of all countries is 24%, Uganda is 33.6%. I don't know. I don't know what measure. I don't know what criteria. I find it quite disturbing. Instead of you speaking the truth, the non-performing of the banks has risen from 15 to 20%.
Yeah.
So on what measure are you saying the economy is turning around? The economy is not going to turn around today or tomorrow. It will take quite a reasonable time. And if I'm a prophet, I'll tell you it's going to take 5 to 7 years.
5 to 7 years to
before
recover.
we can be where we were.
That's to mean to reach single digit inflation.
It will take a long time.
You know,
even because the single digit inflation they talk about, how many times did we achieve it? Even when there was no COVID.
Yeah.
I think it's once. 8 plus or minus
8
2.
plus minus, yeah.
I mean, we achieve only once. And then if you want to achieve the 8 plus minus 2, when you are importing everything, poultry feed, rice, sugar, I don't know, even dead bodies. How can you control it? Because most of our cost push inflation, the policy rate they are using, they are looking at demand push. But the cost push is something that is coming from external. Crude oil. With these hammers, and if it's been in old days, this hammers fight could have shot the oil to about $100 per barrel.
As of last week Friday, it went
About
up
88.
Yeah.
No, it's good.
Yeah.
It's good because the Israelis have formed alliance with the Saudi Arabia and Kuwait.
Yeah, Egypt and all that.
They all come together. In those days, it wasn't. In the 90s, it wasn't like that.
Yeah.
Fortunately, but even if it's at $88 per barrel, convert the city that is going to run. The city is going to run because look, the economy, the difference between the export and imports is what is going to drive the currency. And if you're only getting only 600 million to support a currency that is driven by 9 billion worth of imports, 12 billion, how would you do it? That is why in the IMF policy document, they said BOP financial gap is about 15 billion. And they are providing only, I think, 4.5 billion. It is left to us to see how the gap of about 11 billion will be captured so that we can address the currency and current account deficits.
Doc, quickly on the currency stability, we've seen from last year, we saw the CD reach 12 cedis to $1. As of now, we are almost in December. 12, yeah. Now we are almost at 11 cedis, 95, almost 12 cedis.
Yes,
we're back
12.
again to where we were. Do you think there has been any change from where we were last year to this point?
I think last year, because we were inconsistent in our policy taking and policy decision, a lot of, you see, the foreign investors who bought the domestic debt, don't forget, they held about 14 billion.
Yeah, they had more.
Yeah, they had more in the domestic debt.
Yeah.
And they all, because of the conditions, they all had to run.
Yeah.
And when they ran down. That's why Bank of Ghana Reserve dropped at the lowest in the history. Because everybody went there and dumped the thing on them.
Yeah.
We're not going to have a stable city even as we have it now.
So we're never going to go back to 8 cities, 7 cities?
No way. maybe after my generation. Because until we begin to adopt export diversification, serious one, like the Ivorians. Ivorians don't depend on cocoa. Coffee. You know coffee, they are there.
Yeah.
You know banana, they are there.
Yeah.
You know citruses, they are there.
Yeah.
What about oil palm? Let me give you a story. When the COVID came, the Lever brothers were getting oil. Unilever was getting his oil from Singapore, and you know that
Malaysia.
They turn all to Ivory Coast now because it is nearer to supply. So Ivory Coast is now a kingpin in oil palm or whatever, palm oil to the Unilever in Netherlands. Wow. So they have a diversified economy, strategic diversified economy. We have a monoculture. Monoculture means agric cocoa. Nobody has said that let us do something to what we have, and we can do something, but that is not our agenda. Our agenda is to tell people, open our mouth, we want to do this and that, so that people will clap for us. But on the reality, and that affects the currency. In my lecture last week, I told Ghana Economic Forum, until we sit down as a country and develop a national agenda, like Kwame Nkrumah did, saying that we're going to do agric, which of the agrics are we going to do? That is why I find it quite now interesting. The rice, I'm very happy some gurus are going into rice. Because you are spending over about 2 billion in rice
to
import. When Nigeria has stopped rice importation.
They won't even allow you in there.
No. That's why he closed the border. When there was the border closed, people were saying, no. It's not a cover. They have produced so much rice, and the people were using the hobby to offload it. Man. So Buhari said, no.
The smuggling was too much.
Let us use. So if we go to Nigeria, and don't forget, there's a Ghanaian who helped them to do the rice. The Ghanaians are brilliant. At least God has endowed us. At least we are the only African country who has a United Nations General Secretary, Kofi Annan. I mean, the whites salute us, but we don't salute ourselves. We don't want the truth. We want sycophancy, bootlickers, even taking a decision. They don't want anybody to speak about it. It's not an issue. But even twins, they cannot have the same mind on issues. I am a twin.
Really?
Yes. But me and my younger brother, who is dead, may he so rest in peace, we never agree on what we do. I want to school. He wants to be a farming. But it does not mean that he's a bad person. I encourage him. And he also encouraged me. But here, when you say it, like I'm speaking to you, tomorrow, I don't know how people will brand me. He will say so many things, but thanks be to God who has created me in his image. I will speak the truth. Galatians 4:16. Or see, because I'm telling the truth, would that be your enemy? I prefer to tell you your truth to be your enemy. Because I won't stand before you. I stand before the judgment throne, and I'll be judged accordingly.
Doc, I've been having a very interesting conversation with you. Thank you so much for the time.
It's a pleasure.
We definitely have to do a part 2 of this.
All right.
Yes. I've been speaking with Dr. Richmond Atuahene. He's a banking consultant. We've been talking all things about the banking sector, from the debt exchange, from the Bank of Ghana, and also development in the currency. He's been my guest on this week's edition of BizTech. We'll be bringing you part 2 of this conversation. Please don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.